So I had a student write me asking for some help with their Bagua, and I've never done any Bagua videos as far as, instructional type stuff. So I wrote myself a few notes on the board here, and we can talk a little bit about, basic kind of Bagua stuff. This is all about circle walking, and a little bit of hand position and stuff. Maybe I'll just come closer so you can sort of make some sense of it perhaps. So up here we've got, this is all circle walking kind of stuff, right? All the different pieces of Tanglibu, which is the mud wading step. It might not make sense. This is just sort of my notes to myself. How the circle starts to work. And then it goes into like the Lição, the old three palms, and hand positions from two different Bagua systems that I practice. Anyway, so let's do some basics. Why not? So Bagua essentially, it can be kind of said that Bagua is actually a really complicated stepping system with a few hand movements. There's a lot to the stepping, like a lot. So you have to train it a lot to get things working. What it's kind of trying to do is it's trying to break your habits of how you normally walk, so that when you're walking, when you're in motion, you become much more stable and much faster, much more able to change direction. So the first thing you have to do is you have to start to kind of retrain your body to walk differently. So there's a couple of cool exercises for this. So Ox Paws the Earth is a great exercise. My Gofu brother has it on his YouTube channel as well, Kevin Walbridge. He's got a bunch of Bagua stuff too, from Baguazhang. So Ox Paws the Earth, this is about how I actually lift my legs. So when we normally lift our legs, we kind of do it from our thigh down, okay? It's this set of muscles that's engaging into my buttocks and everything else. And what we're going to try to do instead is we're going to try to release this stuff in our legs and use our hips. So it has a lot to do with the flanks of the body, truthfully. I might be kind of jumping ahead here, but a lot of Bagua, like the 8 small palms from Chungsta, it has all to do with, not all, but a big chunk of it is about conditioning the flanks of the body and breaking up the waist. So what I mean by breaking the waist is that you have dantian, right, around the belly button area, and you've got tanzhong, which just means center of the chest. And these two things are generally stuck to one another, and they need to be free moving. So if I leave my dantian in place, I need to be able to move tanzhong around without dantian being involved. And that's breaking the waist. It's one of the reasons Bagua is so good for your health, because it pushes the internal organs against each other when you're doing that kind of stuff. But Ox Paws the Earth. So what Ox Paws the Earth is, I'll turn sideways here, is when I pick up my foot, let me make sure you kind of see my foot. When I pick up my foot, okay, I'm going to pick it up with my hip. So my right hip, I'll leave my hand on it. My right hip actually picks itself up, and that pulls my foot off the earth. And then I'm going to push my hip over, like it's going to rotate up, and then over to put my foot back down, and then down to pull my foot back. So what I'm doing here is, I won't slap the ground too hard here, is I'm trying to make my pelvis rotate, okay? So when I do this, I'll just take my hands off. I'm not actually hitting the ground with my leg, if you will. It's the dropping of my hips. My hip picks up, rolls forward, drops, and pulls back underneath. So this is a wobbling thing like this. So when you're walking in Chung style, it wobbles over the top. You can almost say that Chung style is like walking up a hill. Because when you walk up a hill, right, you have to step higher each time. And you kind of actually do engage your hips, but people don't really notice it. So Ox Paws the Earth, this is the yang hip, if you will. The hip that rolls over the top. There's also the yin hip. So the yin hip exercise is exactly the opposite. I actually drop my hip and pick it up and put it back. Okay? And this is how the Yin Fu guys walk. Like, I've only studied a bit of Yin Fu, but when Yin Fu walks, it's like walking down a hill. So you roll down so that you've got footing before you move on. And in that one, the hip kind of comes underneath. So I'm mainly a Chung guy and a Baguazhang guy. We'll stick with that one. But training both of those exercises really loosen the hips up. They really free things up. And it allows you to start to realize that when you walk, you're actually closing and opening flanks of the body. So if I do it facing the camera, you might not be able to see my feet, but that should be okay. If I do it facing the camera, you can see that I'm not going to do this. This is incorrect. Tipping my upper body, okay? This means that tanzhong is not free of dantian. So here I'll stop that, leave tanzhong where it is, and you'll see that the flank on my right side is closing and opening again. So that's what I'm looking for. And essentially, it's kind of how you end up walking. There's a couple of other really, really good drills. These would be basically considered Fujigongfa, like secret stuff. Because you normally see people when they do their Bagua, in the public, they're just sort of walking, right? They're just sort of walking around. They try to look really smooth and everything, because that's what the masters look like. They have no force, they have no power, they have no root. And floating root's really hard to get. Like, it's years. But it still has to be achieved, right? You still have to be trying to achieve it. You can't just sort of walk around in circles and think you're doing Bagua. So you have to settle into your legs and get this ox paws to the earth thing working. And I'll show you one other of these exercises that's really good for waking this up. My brother calls it tin soldier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my knees. Okay, so I actually lock my whole body out, and then I'm going to walk with my legs locked. So I have to pick up just from my hips, right? And I try to keep Tanjong as still as possible as I walk towards you here. And just walking around like this gives you that feeling of the flanks opening and closing. So now you have ox paws, the earth, and the tin soldier. There's a few more of these, but we'll just talk about very basic stuff. At that point, you can sort of start trying to walk. So you settle into the legs as though you're sitting on a stool. So I've got a big bar stool underneath me. And when I'm doing my walking, at first everybody looks really awkward when they do this, and they should, right? So just think about ox paws the earth. So I bring my weight into that front leg, and I pick up, in this case, my left hip, and put it down. And I bring my weight into my left leg here, boom. Okay? So at first, you'll feel really awkward, and you'll look really weird and awkward, but if you can keep your head level so you're not bouncing, okay, and this isn't happening, it'll eventually start to smooth out. When you see a really good Bagua master walk, you can't tell that's what's going on. But if you touch their hips, you'll feel the hips rolling back and forth. It just becomes subtle, right? Just like anything in martial arts, it gets quieter and smaller as you go on. So now you've got a couple of exercises to walk. And you can just walk with this. You can just walk with this. There's so much more to this stuff, but maybe I'll do it in a couple of videos. So, ox paws the earth, work that. Okay, both yang and yin hips, and then the tin soldier stepping, and just try to walk, picking up the hips at first. That's a good place to start Bagua training. All right, we'll do another one here.